Alright everybody, today I have a Sony BVM that I'm not too sure about whether it's in that great a shape or not. This is a 1311. It is working. There's flashing that intermittently comes on the screen and goes away. You can see it there, see how it's doing all that nonsense. Right now it's in component mode because external sync will not work. That's attached to this card. And then this card does the RGB input and the component video and stuff. So, I will tell you that while you cannot smell it, there's a pungent odor of fish oil coming out of this thing. It smells like fish butt. I'm going to assume that there are capacitors in here that are bad. And that's probably the majority of the issues. This is from 1993. So, this is an instance where, you know, this is a no-brainer. The one thing I do want to do, though, is test the CRT tube, because this flashing could be an indication that the CRT itself has too many hours on it, and that kind of flashing could be the result of a short on, like, the heater. So if we need to confirm whether that's really the case or not. So the next thing I'm going to try to do is get the back off of this thing and hook up the CRT tester. We're going to run the CRT analysis and just see what kind of condition the tube is in. You can see an orange glow because I do have this thing setting up, and I'm about to set up the voltage it's powered on. I went and used the back of the neck board here to guide me on which pins are which. And then I have the orange is red, the green is green, the dark blue is blue, and then you have the G1 and the G2 and the H1 and the H2 right there below it. That one is just a calibration prong that's not used for the test. So let's get in here and do the test. I'm sorry about the neighbors and their mowing. It is a rainy day, so it's pretty surprising that they'd be out there cutting the grass, but what can you say, huh? Okay, we're at 6.3 volts. That's where we want to be. Over here we want to be at 50 volts. We're going to set our G1 right there. Tracking. Over here, this is right. This just checks and tells me how it's the line voltage. It is about 119 over here. That's normal. That's what it always seems to run when I test it. So that's what that's telling you. All right. So you got heater voltage, G1 voltage, and then the line voltage coming from your wall. Let's see. Do we see any indicator lights? Ugh. You see that? That's a possible short detection right there. You see how there's... Sorry. But you see how those little LEDs are blinking? They're not even LEDs. They're old school. Let's see. Generally, that means that the colors are leaking. Okay, we're gonna try to set our heater voltage now. Set our cutoffs. This needs to be at 1 above 0. I think it's stabilized. Let's see what happens. This is literally going to give us the test results right when I click over. Just a blue test. Alright, blue is here. And it's in the good zone. Let me hook up the red and the green and see what happens. Hey everybody, welcome back in today to Retro Tech. I'm Steve and I'm working on this Sony BVM 1311. I wanted to give you a little bit of an explanation of what we got going on currently. Now I have hooked up the BK467, which is an old school tool that you can use to test CRT tubes. I showed you the universal adapter hooked up. We noticed that there was some leakage going on. Now you have to be very careful not to get overexcited and think that leakage is actually happening. These older tubes, and especially the BVM tubes on Sony BVMs, these Trinitron tubes tend to have their own ground lines into the CRT electron gun. So what's happening here is I'm only able to get my ground pin for my G1 and G2 grounds on one of those grounding on my adapter. So I'm not actually getting a ground circuit between the red and the green. So I'm individually having to test each one of these colors. You'll see me test the red and the green now. But the leakage part could be also a short, but at the same time, it could be because we're not completing that ground circuit with every ground, and it's possibly detecting some kind of leakage because it's looking for a ground on those other two colors, and it's not really detecting it. So I just don't want you to think that ultimately you have a bad tube, because this can lead you down the wrong path of repair. But I do promise you, we're going to fix this BVM today. Thank you again for joining me. If you like CRT repair videos and chats about CRTs and just general love for old tech, please do subscribe to the channel and check out the other videos from the past. I will get back to the Sony BVM 1311 and the tube testing right now. This time we're just doing the green. So what I had to do over here was I had to switch the G1, which was down there at the bottom, to this top pin right there, because each color has its own G1. So I won't be able to get a reading unless I ground each individually. So right now I'm just going to check the green. That's the only one that should give me a test result on here. Should. Yes. Okay. Green is a little bit less, 1.3. Okay, now we're ready to test our final color. You can see I've moved the yellow probe over there to the red, which is the green, or I'm sorry, the G1 for the red. Everything else is set up here. We're just worried about the red, what this is. Oh, it's drifted up on me. Oh, yeah, the red's the lowest. Definitely a lot of use on this tube, see? There we go. Alright, I've reset up everything, and you can see it's flashing like crazy. Can you see it? I know it's very difficult to see sometimes on film. We've got all these boards in here, and these three, I pulled them and I didn't see any bad capacitors leaking, but there's definitely some that are smelling bad over in there. I can still smell them as they get warm and that fluid heats up. So that's, I mean, another issue. But if you let this run for a while, sometimes the flashing will stop. Sometimes it'll go away for a minute and then it just comes back. So I've got the power supply pulled on the board because that's where the smell was coming from. I kept thinking it was up here, but what was happening, it was heating up under that. And the power supply is directly under that, and it slides out the back. And then here it is. So this would be flipped around. Let's see. Normally it would be in that orientation. So the smell was strong coming from this area. And so what I've done is I've set up my GME in-circuit tester, and I want to show you some readings on some of these capacitors. I did go ahead and do a pre-check on them, and I've marked some ones that I'm going to ultimately remove and change out just to see if that's what's causing the smell. Most of the capacitors read pretty good for their age. I can tell you that when I looked back here, you could see like some of these capacitors have been, I'm guessing, removed at some point and maybe tested. Some of them maybe have been replaced because this is different solder after the fact, and it's not like cleaned. It's like just got the flux left there. Some rework done over here on the ICs too, and the capacitors, you'll like, some of these were Elnas and stuff that would, these are the same ones that were in Sony's factory. So I was thinking that it looks like a lot of these capacitors were just maybe pulled and inspected and then reinstalled, as opposed to being actually changed. So let me show you an example here of something we have marked up that is in this zone that's reading high. These are 100 microfarad capacitors up here, these two that you see with the X's on them, and that corresponds over here to the, I think, C74 and 75. Yeah, that's it. So let's see, this is 100 microfarad capacitors. I have discharged them, and so you should discharge them before you do that, or you could damage your tool or just get a bad reading. So you put the positive lead on the positive end, the negative lead on the negative end, and watch, let's see. Whoop, that's the wrong one. Sorry, C74. I was on C10 there. I was like, what? So we're going to, and we get a reading of 1.2 on the ohms meter. It's going up. 1.4, 1.5 up. And if we go over here to 100, that's right in the cusp of that red. Whoa, look at it jumping up there. So I don't think this capacitor is good. Like, I think this is bad. I haven't moved it. You can see it shooting all over the place upwards. So that's what I've done. I've gone through here. Let's try the one right next to it, because I think it's going to be about the same condition. Yeah, 1.0. This one, let's see if it just stays on 1.0 for a minute. I'll leave it on there. That one's still solid at 1.0, but you can see that corresponds right up into that yellow zone. And those have never been pulled. Some of the ones that were pulled were reading high also. Another thing to be suspicious of are 470 microfarad capacitors on here, which every 470 kind of tested dodgy, which are all the rest of those large barrel-shaped capacitors there that are in here. And like I said, these have even been removed before, but that's not the one. This is the one, isn't it? Yeah, C9. I mean, I'm thinking this one's probably bad also, because it's giving bad. It's like jumping up and down. Sometimes it'll spike up to way high, but it is given a 0.2 ohms, 3 ohm, 0.3 ohms. Sometimes it'll go up to 4, and it's a 470. So anything over 0.1 is suspicious or bad, okay? All right, well, I'm in here in the removal lab, and check this out. C8 is right in line with a lot of these parts, and I thought, you know, I'd just remove all of them in this zone and see what was going on underneath them and test them out of circuit. And check it out. We have some pretty nasty snot down there, and coming from our positive lead here on this capacitor, so we have no bulge, no visible bulge, and but we do have a busted capacitor. That's right off of one of the legs of this transformer, so I'm sure it's a very hot spot. So I'm going to remove the other three right here, and I'll test them all. If I find anything else under this one, I'll show that to you also. Now that everything was out of circuit, I used a better meter, which is this LCR meter right here, and it's the DRE LCR DE 5000, and I've got a negative and positive prong that came with it, and I've gone through and tested. Here's the order that I've removed every capacitor, and I've gone through and tested every capacitor, and these that have X's are the ones that have fallen too far. For example, C29, this 47 microfarad right here, this one's reading like 23, so it's down 50%, and it's not reading high, you know, too high on the ohms. This one right here is also bad. It's a 16 470. Let's see if I can just tap it real quick and show you. See, the prongs are on there. It's, you know, it's down, what is that, 90 points almost, and that's just right at 20% out. So this is why the monitor is actually still working, is these are probably good enough to get it powered on, but I don't know how good the voltage regulation is with stuff like this. So that one's bad. Let's look at these other ones that were reading bad. These 50 volt 1000s, let me show you this. This is pretty wild. So this is our blown capacitor. And again, this is why this monitor will run. It's a 1000 spec, 1000 microfarad spec. But if we look over here at the meter, it's still running like within spec technically. I mean, it's really low, 824. So it's only, you know, it's at like, what is that, like 80, right at 82%. It's almost at 80%. So this is still technically in spec, and the ohms are only reading 0.8. So it's under the ohms reading on the other meter that I use, this one. That's why it didn't pop up as being bad when I tested it in circuit, and I didn't see any of that crud. But that one's like that. This one, I marked it as O for optional, because it's the same exact style capacitor, same brand, but if you pop it on here and read it, let's see here. We're getting, I mean, we're at 85%, so a little lower. So this is like the optional one. I don't know. This cap's like $2, so I might just install this one again. I might install a new one. I haven't fully decided, but anyway, those two were like that. My fear is that this one will just go a little while longer and eventually start to decay like this one did. So it's, to me, it doesn't seem very smart to put that one back in since they're the same capacitor. Got my capacitors all installed and checked out, the new ones, and also reinstalled those old ones. And now we're gonna give her a test up. You just slide that in after connecting the back portion of the monitor. And now everything else is good and connected. Actually, I forgot to put this plate on top of the power supply, so I'm going to do that, slide that back in there, and then we'll run a test again. So the optimistic person would say maybe those 5 bad capacitors in our power supply contributed to poor power regulation and poor filtering of our power, which could have caused a flashing on the screen. That is a possibility. Here we go. No explosions, please. No smoke. No smells. That doesn't look good. Wow. Well, we still got flashing on here. Nothing changed for the flashing. You can really see it. See that? Yep. Okay, I've let it like run for a couple of minutes and I'm getting some wacky stuff happening here. Let's see if I can get it to show up on the screen. It's still doing some flashing, but let's put the contrast in manual mode. Okay, now that's working better. It was working a bit dodgy at first. Maybe that's warmed up and now that's actually making more sense. Let's turn that right there. Let's try brightness. Now check it out. Now, occasionally, if you get the brightness at the right level, it'll stop flashing. And it'll work fine. Like right now, it's not flashing at all. Looks pretty good. I'm still smelling bad capacitors from one of these, I'm guessing, B boards. I mean, it's literally in this area of B, J, I, or H, which is BJIH. I don't even know. Or is that B? Yeah, BJIH. I'm guessing that those are like the main boards on this that have to be. Yeah, we're getting flashing again. Makes me wonder if there's something. So you can manually get it to flash, 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 flash. And then if you have it set like at this brightness right here, it's not flashing. It's working. Looks good. Normal. There's a possibility that servicing maybe these 3 cards, gosh, could cause that to go away. Let me see if I can find like some spare cards like that to swap in here. Maybe. Alright, so I took out this first BJ card and freshened it up with all new capacitors, higher rating, and there's no way of knowing just what's going to happen until we slide this in here and test it out. I checked solder on there. I did reflow solder on all these potentiometers. So we'll see. If we get the smell again, then it's probably BI. There we go. Let's see. Still flashing. All right, there. So seeing it pops now. Yeah. Gosh, I'm still smelling fish, I think. Ugh, it means it's not the BH. And it's still acting the same, so... I wonder if I can find anything nasty on the next card. Just power it off and pull old BI out. Well, I've done some experimenting, and I found another one of these monitors that is a 1911, and Cole's come here. He's going to cry as we talk about this CRT, I bet, because he's just being weird. Anyway, serviced this one, installed this one and this one from the spare unit, just to see if it made any difference, because I can smell so many bad caps on those two. It doesn't smell great in there, so I'm not sure, again, what's causing all that. But I just wanted to swap boards, see if it made any difference. Let's see. You know, this is in manual, and it should not be doing that. You see how it's flashing like that? Well, I started to like think more and more, and I know we're playing, you know, investigator here together. And I noticed that, yeah, the smell comes from over here, but maybe it's coming from over here, because down in there is, you see lights and stuff down there? You see that little light? That's the control board. And that smells, maybe that's where the bad capacitors are on this board, where you could pull this tray out and there's controls in behind there, and that's probably where a bad capacitor is. Maybe that's it, just the regulation on the like brightness is not right. The problem is I can't get this out because the owner didn't leave me the key to this BVM. All right, I've let this run for a little while, and now you'll notice a lot of the color has just completely left the picture. It's very dull, dark, and interestingly enough, the controls are no longer working on anything. And let's see, I haven't power cycled it since it's done this. I'm thinking maybe we just like wore out the capacitors in that are, again, it's got to be that control box, or there's a voltage regulation, again, panel right here. I couldn't see anything from this view. That possibly could have a bad cap in it, but I'm willing to guess that since our stuff's gone out, it's that board right there. Down in there with those LED lights lit up right down in there that I cannot get to right now because of the blocking or the lock. Let's power cycle it real quickly. Give it a second to cool down and see if the color comes back at all when I repower it on. If anything's different or if it's just staying that dull image. Manual brightness mode. This was what was causing everything to flash, and now we're not getting in this. Wow. Yeah, I have no idea. I'm more than certain that now this is the problem, because it's just starting to fail. Hey everybody, I just wanted to say thanks for hanging through, and we're still troubleshooting this. Just want to let you know that the most important tool in this troubleshooting session probably had to be my nose. It was the most helpful thing. I was able to smell the bad capacitors, and although I had to methodically proceed down restoring like 3 or 4 boards where I was following that smell, eventually I think we got into the right spot here with the front control panel board. So that's what we're going to do now, is we're going to try to get into this CRT and the control board where there's that key lock, and then we'll see if there's anything bad inside there that's causing these issues ultimately. But just remember, sometimes you just got to do the old follow your nose trick, and it could lead you to the right spot eventually. Okay, we're here looking at this BVM, and I finally got the key, which you have to have this key to unlock both these adjustment trays. And I've gotten in here and I can definitely see where our leaking capacitors are and what's the smells coming from. Check it out. See all that residue, discoloration up in there on those capacitors? That's all the fluids that have leaked out and burned up from being on the conductors. And over there we've got some fluids all over the place which leaked on that one, and there's quite a few of these capacitors in here. I counted and it's like 30. So that's definitely given us some issues. This is a pretty important board, as you can tell, the HZ board, and a lot of logic on there for especially something from 1993. I'm gonna have to pull this board and recap it, rebuild it. So that's what we're gonna do now. We're gonna pull this board and check it out closer, but I definitely see a bunch of bad capacitors. Hopefully the board itself is not damaged. Okay, here's this pulled control board. I've removed just the top board and the wiring harness that's fed in through over here. And now we have the HZ board by itself, and I'm going to pull these capacitors and we'll clean them and take a look at them, and at least the traces after that. Let's see what it looks like after I remove them. But I am going to remove these, and they're so close together. Sony boards like this are actually quite durable, so my first method's going to be to just try to twist them off. I know that that's controversial to some people, but honestly, some of these would be too difficult to try to heat up and not damage something else next to it. So I can actually do better by twisting them off personally. Whatever floats your boat, do that way. Also, you need to consider what materials you're working on and the circuit board quality. But I know for a fact these circuit boards are really hardy and should do fine. So, all right, so this is pretty remarkable. I did remove all the capacitors here and just check out what was hiding underneath them. So again, I told you this was a hardy board, and as hardy I mean like hard built, high quality, heavy duty. So the point of failure or weakness on these capacitors is the legs of them attached to the capacitor barrel itself here. So by spinning that, you're just weakening that bond, and most of the time the legs just rip in half. And it's been oxidizing or corroding under the process of time and heat and breakdown of those components, or that shell that's holding in the fluid. Every single one of these 30 capacitors was leaking on here. Every single one of them. So definitely time to replace all these. And what we're going to do is I'm going to throw all these out, and I'm going to clean up this board. And then after cleaning it with a bunch of alcohol, I'll come in here and I'll clean these pads off and get them tinned up for installing new capacitors. All right, this thing has been serviced for the first step. I thought I'd show you what a closer look at this board shows. There's definitely damage to the solder mask. Now thankfully that's pretty easy to replace, but I will wait till after most likely I install the new capacitors to really add that solder mask. It doesn't look like any trace has been damaged to the point where it's lifted, or I mean a pad is lifted or a trace is severed. I did not find anything, just damage to the solder mask mostly, which is good. I did clean it all off with isopropyl alcohol a number of times, and then I reflowed it with solder. Then I sucked all the solder out, cleaned it again. Now it's kind of ready to have new capacitors installed and then the solder mask repair. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to install all the capacitors and touch up that solder mask, and I'll show you what that looks like, and then we'll throw it back in that BVM. I've got the HZ board reinstalled here, and I'm about to put the top board on it, but here's those capacitors. That's the repaired trace right there. And I'm just going to try a test run here. Hopefully everything works. It's really hard to tell. I didn't find anything else that I thought was problematic. If everything works after this, I'll be happy. If not, I'll have to take this back out and troubleshoot it some more and see if I can find which traces are probably damaged that I missed. That's very possible. Also, if it works, then I'll probably come in here and finally add in the solder mask, or the mask on top of the board for covering up some of those those traces. But I don't want to do that till after I have actually got it working, because I might need to troubleshoot and see if that's involved in any issue. But there it is. Wish me luck. Let's see what happens when I rebuild it and reinstall it. Alright, I have the board back in and powered on. So far so good. Now it's literally only been about 30 seconds. But, like, all the screen flickering that was going on is not happening yet, right? I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. But the real test is just sit here and let it run. Let's click start. Let's put on something unsurprising. We'll let it run. Now I do want to show you something. Check this out. I'm using these awesome new cables from RetroTink Mike Chi. Super high quality. My goodness. These are like the most high quality heavy duty RGB cables I've ever seen. Anyway, working great with my BVM here. Look at that. I mean, I'm thinking that there's a good chance maybe that screen flicker was, again, related to a lot of those capacitors on here. Hopefully, because there's screen processing controls under there that, again, if those fail, that would make sense to me. But I'll report back after this runs for a little while. Alright, well, we were able to fix that CRT. I mean, everything that we did led up to that point where I finally found the problem was in that bay. And like I said a little bit ago, it was locked with a key. We had to order the key from eBay. And once it arrived, I was able to open it up, pull that board out as you saw, and we serviced it. That was the one causing all the issues. Because, again, every single one of those awful capacitors was going bad or gone bad, and I'll play video footage of me operating through this BVM because the card that was serviced does control a lot of the settings on the BVM. That's how I was able to switch from component video mode over to RGB mode and use that to test it, as well as the other video inputs. And the monitor ultimately works really well and looks nice, even though the tube was a little bit aged, especially on the red color. It still looked really great. And, you know, at this point, you could go through and fully service this BVM. These older BVMs, it tends to be the same story where over time the capacitors break down, and after 33 years, some of them need to be replaced. Eventually, all of them will need to be replaced, or more things will go bad inside this BVM. But for now, it's working great, and it tests out fine, and that's how it's been fixed. It did take, you know, goodness gracious, about 8 or 9 hours of troubleshooting ultimately to do that. And the benefit of all that work that we did do was we were able to get a good baseline for this BVM and figure out what it really needs going forward. Again, if you want to service it fully, you could do that, or you could just use it as it is and watch it, maintain it over the years, check the bays with each of the capacitors, just look at them, make sure they're not failing further. But ultimately, hey, it's a fun CRT. I'm glad we got to save it. Thanks again for joining me today. There's going to be some cool stuff coming this year. Many of you maybe don't know, I did start a new podcast with Kyle Bortoff from Retro Access, the cable company. He also has a couple of other companies. Things that they make are like parts for PVMs. Kaitor Industries has made parts for PVMs. Anyway, he and I started a new podcast. It's called the Retro Idiots Podcast. And most of the episodes are going to be live. So if you see a live notification and it says RIP on it, you want to check that show out. That will definitely be a lot of fun. We talk about tech issues and tech stuff and just kind of, have fun with it. It's not a super serious show. Anyway, I've got a lot more CRTs to work on. Thankfully, the shop is full and the queue is long. So I'll be bringing you a lot more CRT repair content. I've also got some more fun videos coming of some shopping trips I did, and I picked up a lot of CRTs over the last 6 months. A lot of that I documented, so I plan to bring you a state of the CRT market, if you want to call it that. Those kind of fun videos seem to do better with the algorithm. So look for that to come soon. Thanks again for watching today, everybody. I'll see y'all next time with some more retro content.